Okay, hey everybody, Tekking101 here. Welcome back to the show. And as you can see, I'm wearing the chicken hat. At least I think it's a chicken. I'm not 100% sure what animal this hat is supposed to be based off of, but let's just go ahead and call it the chicken hat. Anyway, as you might know from if you saw the review I did yesterday, which I would recommend watching my review yesterday because this is going to be the immediate follow-up to the review I did yesterday, I got a haircut. So who wants to guess what my hair looks like now? Go ahead and comment down below. Oh, I bet Tekking got a mohawk, I guess. I don't know. I don't know a lot of different hairstyles, as you can clearly see if you've been watching this channel for any certain amount of time. Anyway, big reveal in 3, 2, 1. Aha! I went with this, and my hair still does, even after getting it cut, it still does the cowlick thing. Whatever. Okay, maybe one of these days I'm just gonna go bald. I considered it every now and then. I mean, I should just shave my head. It would be good for views, if nothing else. Like, anyway. Okay, so, what was... Oh, yeah, Barry. Barry's still on vacation. He's in, let's say, Egypt right now. He finally made it to Egypt. Here he is in front of the Great Pyramid of Giza and, the Pyramid of Khafra and Menkaura. Yeah, they're all back there. Yeah, there you go. Okay. So, yeah, we're gonna just be doing a general follow-up to Chapter 1064. 1064 jumped around a lot. There was a lot to unpack with that one, okay? Half of the chapter, and it's because Oda is switching up everything, okay? We're not used, like, this would be, imagine if back during Dressrosa, like, we're in the middle of Dressrosa, where, like, everybody's running around Greenbit and Fujitora, and, Doflamingo's there, and then in the middle of Dressrosa, we just cut to see, I don't know, Gecko Moria fighting against Blackbeard or something. I know that doesn't make sense for the timeline, but you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't, that's the thing. It's just out of nowhere, right? So it's like, okay, the Straw Hats are on Egghead. That's really cool. Cypher Pole Zero's arriving. We have enough stuff going on. And then it's like, okay, hold on a moment. We also got to show Blackbeard fighting against Law. Okay, so that's how the chapter opened up. I'm just going to move this over here. So let's open up with that. So first thing I wanted to bring up is that I was a little confused exactly what the R-Room ability does, because that's how it, like, opened up the chapter where Law used Amputate, which is one of his standard techniques. That's not, like, a brand new technique. That's actually, like, one of the first techniques he's ever used in the entire story as far back as Sabaody, when we first got introduced to Law's powers, during the auction house. When the Marines were there, Law, like, walked out. He's like, room, shambles, and then he used Amputate. He didn't call it Amputate back then, but that was what the technique was. So I was a little confused why Blackbeard was calling it an awakened ability, which it is. He used R-Room, but, like, how is that any different from any other ability, any other, amputate he used? And I'm getting the impression from based off the comments and how this kind of works and everything, R-Room probably stands for remote room. I'm assuming the R-Room and the K-Room, they do have, like, actual words that they stand for. We just haven't learned about them yet. But R-Room being remote room does make a lot of sense. And that also explains why Blackbeard had the reaction to it that he did. Because Blackbeard has to be fully at least aware of, like, Law's basic techniques and how he fights. Now, Blackbeard does tend to just dive into battle sometime without really understanding his opponent's Devil Fruit power. We saw that back at Impel Down in that famous example. Like, yeah, there's Magellan, the guy that can control poison, right? Whatever. We could just walk right up to him. You see how that went. But the implication was that, Blackbeard was at least aware that Law, how his room works, and this technique caught him completely off guard. So the idea was like, okay, this was an awakened technique that Blackbeard was not aware of. So with our room, the idea, and I even said this in the review, but I kind of like backpedaled on it because I wasn't sure. But I think with our room, Law opens up the little bubble in his hand, but then that's not where the room comes from. That's basically like the controller for like a video game or whatever. That's the controller for his room. So like a little orb appears in his hand, and then using our room, he can create the bubble, the room, from anywhere around him. There's probably a set range at which he can make a remote room, but still the range, it's like in his immediate vicinity. So Blackbeard was, and this will be made more clear in the anime. In fact, I was even envisioning how the anime could handle this. You have Blackbeard riding on top of Doc Q, who's riding on top of Stronger, diving for Law, And then all of a sudden, as Blackbeard's about to punch him and like quake bubble, all of a sudden a room just opens up around him. Not a room around Law that Blackbeard enters, because he's probably aware of that much. That's probably why he was trying to attack him from the air. Like, I gotta stay out of Law's range. Because with the basic room, it's that you have to wait for the enemy to enter the room in order for Law to fight back. With our room, or let's say remote room, it basically makes it so that the room appears around the enemy so the enemy cannot get close to Law. So it kind of honestly solves one of Law's greatest weaknesses, whereas, yes, the room is the prerequisite for all of his abilities. He needs to open up room in order to do anything with the op-op fruit, but the problem is, if, you know, your enemy's in the room, that means it's sort of like close quarters combat. Now, there's a lot of techniques that Law uses, like shambles and tact, where he can like move people around the room. He's, you know, has a, you know, certain degree of power inside of the bubble, but it's just easier if your opponent, if you can mess with them and use the tact and shambles when they're a far distance from you. They're trapped in their own bubble, you're not trapped in there with them. Okay, so I think that's what our room is really all about. As for K room, I still don't know what the K stands for. Maybe Karen. It stands for Karen room. You know, it just like, it's the ultimate technique that allows Law to complain to any manager. He activates K room, he stabs Blackbeard, and he's like, I would like to speak to your manager. And then Blackbeard's like, no, say ha ha. And then Blackbeard's like mom appears behind him or something. It's like, Marshall D. Teach, what are you doing? Go to your room, young man. What are you trying to do? Steal all these devil fruit abilities, become a Yonko, and take over the world. Out with you. And then Blackbeard's like, okay, mom. And then he just leaves, and he's like grounded for life, and then that's it. That's how Law wins. Actually, you know what? I joke about, like, okay, 98% of that was a joke. Blackbeard's mother was actually drawn by Oda. It was like, I don't think in the canon of this version of the story, but like when the planning stages, there was a moment where Blackbeard was going to have a mother and I believe 2 sisters as well that were going to be incorporated in the story in some way. I mean, they still might be. It's just that they're not right now, okay? But there are designs for them. So yeah, there is something, a little bit of a, you know, One Piece factoid for you there. Okay, so that was the situation with the R room, or the remote room. So thanks for everybody to clearing that up for me. For that reason, I don't think Stronger is dead when Stronger got cut in half by Amputate. It's the same situation. You know, now, it might be a thing like similar to Radio Knife, where with Radio Knife, you couldn't like patch yourself back together right away. So I don't think Stronger's going to be able just to like, you know, Doc Q's not going to be able to like, it's okay, buddy, and then just like paste them back together. He might be good to go. It might not be a situation like that, so they might not be able to fly on Stronger anymore. Let's see here. Heart Pirate's getting knocked down by the quake. Doc Q throws the apples. Then we get the scene with Sachi and Penguin. All right, so I gotta talk about this because this was something that came out of nowhere. I did that whole video talking about like, okay, how are the Heart Pirates gonna handle Blackbeard's crew? And I had a lot of faith in them. I thought they could definitely stand up to, like, I was specifically focusing on Burgess in that video. Ironically enough, Burgess doesn't even show up in this chapter. I don't think it's the weirdest thing. Burgess shows up, throws a mountain, and then that's it. I guess he just went off to take a bathroom break or something. I don't know. But yeah, so Sachi's able to dive into the water, absorb a bunch of the seawater, just suck up a bunch of the seawater, like several gallons of ocean water, and use it as like a water spout. Not even a water spout. It's more of like freaking hydro pump or like water pulse from Pokemon. Okay? A lot of people actually sent me a link to David Blaine apparently doing this, like the magician David Blaine. He apparently drank a bunch of water and did this basic same thing. I don't think it was as high pressure as what Sachi's using here, but still. So in the video, I said, well, what if Sachi and Penguin are fishmen? And I'm like, nah, that doesn't make any sense. But also, if you look at like something else in the video, talking about Kuma and his special race that he's part of, we'll get into that a little bit later, it's also possible that Sachi and Penguin might not be full fishmen. They might be like half fishmen, like Derringer was. Okay, a lot of people brought up Derringer, and I'm like, oh yeah, because Derringer is like the only example of a half fishman. Well, no, not the only example, because Big Mom did have some kids that were also half fishmen, but they weren't really focused on all that much. There was Praline, who was a mermaid, and then Praline also had a sister who was an octopus mermaid, but I think the only fishman in Big Mom's family was like one of the kids that we didn't really focus on too much. So that might have been the situation there. So there are other examples of like half mermaids or half fishmen, but Derringer's probably the most prominent example. I should bring up Jack really quickly, because some people still might think that, like, Jack is half fishman, because I thought that for a long time. No, Jack is confirmed to be a full-blooded fishman, okay? 100% fishman there. So that's the situation with Jack. But you know what? Even if it's a situation where Sachi and Penguin are not half fishmen, they're only, like, maybe 1/4 fishman or 1/8, like, they have the lineage in them, going along with, like, other characters that are really big, you know, like Whitebeard, who I mentioned in the last chapter. Whitebeard is not, like, giant-sized. In fact, he's shorter than Kaido and Big Mom, who are also not even close to giant size. Big Mom is 8 meters tall. She's 8.88 meters tall, because it can be read as, you know, haha in Japanese, which can be mother. Okay, so that's kind of the joke there. You know, Hachi, so haha, mother. It's like the, you know, the reference. That's also why there's an 8 in her bounty as well. But they're not even close. Like, you have to be 12 meters minimum to be considered a giant. Okay, so Whitebeard's not even close to that, but he's still way bigger than the average human. And there's a lot of other really tall people in the One Piece world, really big people that aren't quite giant-sized. So I like to think, well, you know, giants exist in the One Piece world. Ancient giants exist. All these other races that are, like, much bigger than, you know, an average human that's, like, 5-6 feet tall. So what if it's, like, way back in Whitebeard's lineage, way back in Big Mom's lineage, maybe further back in Whitebeard's than it is with Big Mom, because Big Mom is, like, really big, okay? That there was a giant or something. And that would actually be very... It would be very poetic in Big Mom's case, where all of the giant society in the world hate her for what she did when she was a little kid, and then eventually also what Lola did, you know, basically leaving Loki at the altar kind of a thing. You know, and so all the giants hate Big Mom's family for that reason. It would be really ironic at the end of the day if Big Mom's, like, grandfather or grandmother was a giant, and that's the reason why she is, you know, so big, okay? So it might be a situation like that. I certainly don't think Sachi and Penguin are normal humans because of this, because, you know, a lot of weird stuff happens in One Piece. You gotta give me that. I mean, honestly, like even just look at, like, oh no, Luffy lost a tooth, I'll just drink some milk and it'll just pop back in, good as new, you know? A lot of weird stuff like that happens, so the idea that Sachi can just absorb, like, 3 times his body weight in seawater, by the way, salt water that's not affecting him negatively in any respect, and then firing it like a hydro pump at the enemy, like... You know, you could say that in One Piece, it's way more believable than it happening in our world, but there has to be something going on with this. Sachi himself gives no explanation. He just says, oh, you know, it's a big mistake to underestimate us, you know, because we, you know, we grew up in the harsh waters of the frigid North Blue Port, referring to Swallow Island, where they grew up, and also with Wolf, who maybe Oda is tying in, maybe he will tie in the Law Light novel into this, I don't know. But yeah, so if Sachi and Penguin do have some lineage, and by the way, Sachi's the only one we really saw him using this technique, but Sachi and Penguin were both swimming underwater. Like, they were booking underwater. They are moving very, very fast. A lot of people also brought up Sanji, because Sanji can use Blue Walk, and he can move underwater really fast as well. Sanji does not have access to a Devil Fruit. He also doesn't have, like, he has Haki, but the reason he's able to run so fast underwater, I don't think that has anything to do with his Haki. That's just him having really powerful legs, being able to literally run super fast even underwater, okay, even faster than a fishman can. So, you know, I guess the fact that, like, Penguin and Sachi are swimming really fast underwater, I guess that could just be through training. But the whole water thing, I'm thinking that does, and it resembles kind of like fishman, merman combat a little bit. So, yeah, I mean, I think that would fit for them, even if, like, it's in their lineage. It's not like they're 100% fishman, but, like, they have that in their blood, so they can, you know, do that kind of stuff. Makes sense to me. Beppo basically playing the scout. He's, like, listening in on everything in the battlefield, like, you know, sniper at 3 o'clock, and then Jean Bart, you know, jumps in and, like, you know, uses armament Haki, I guess, to block, you know, Van Auger's bullet. Let's not undersell that at all. Van Auger is one of the greatest snipers in the entire world. You know, probably comparable to Yasopp and Ben Beckman. If there was like a sharpshooting competition between Yasopp, Usopp, Ben Beckman, and Auger, I would probably rank, honestly, I would probably rank Yasopp the greatest sniper in the entire world right now. Like, provided somebody else doesn't show up that's even greater. Out of those 4 characters, I'm going to say Yasopp is the best dead shot in the Old West. You know, he's even better than Ben Beckman. I would then put Ben Beckman as 2. Then I would put Auger as 3, and I put Usopp as 4. Out of those 4, that's still really good. If you like, Usopp ranks 4th or 5th greatest sniper in the entire world, that's still up there pretty good. Now, we also don't know where Wang Zhi ranks either, and I like to think that Wang Ji likes to use guns because the historical Wang Ji or Wang Zhu Ochoku was the one that introduced to rifles in Tanegashima in Japan back in the day. So I like the idea of like maybe Wang Ji using a gun. But out of those 4 characters, I'd say Usopp is the least impressive sniper, but that's still really impressive, right? Well, anyway, the fact is Augur is like a dead shot with this, and his bullets are probably packing a bit of a wallop, and Jean Bart was able to block it. We didn't see exactly how he blocked it. He kind of just dived behind Law, and it looks like the shot hit him like in the chest. Augur looks at Jean Bart, and he's like, tough guard to break. So, you know, yeah, Jean Bart is the tank of this crew. Maybe he has like the strongest armament hockey out of all of the Heart Pirates, and he knows it. And it was additionally that, you know, Augur was essentially like, oh, he's his bodyguard. You know, that's like Law's personal bodyguard, which also makes sense because if Law has a lot of these attacks that he has to wait to set up, you know, he has to open rooms, and he's like K-room, he has to like code his sword. He's like vulnerable for a moment. So like Jean Bart's entire job on the Heart Pirate crew is probably to protect Law when it's needed, okay? Protect his captain. That might have been, that kind of makes it kind of less impressive whenever Law recruited him back at Sab Odi. Like, can you imagine Law just approaches Jean Bart outside the auction house and frees him, and he's like, hey, you want to join my crew? And Jean Bart's like, yeah, if it gets me out of being a slave, sure, I'll join your crew. I'll do whatever you say, Captain. And then Law's like, awesome, you're gonna be my meat shield. Just like, all right, still better than being a slave. Fine, I'll be your personal meat shield. I'm like, all right, let's go. I think there's more, you know, stuff, more of a role on the crew than he does than just that, but still, that's what he excels at. And it seems like he was able to, he doesn't really look like he took a lot of damage, so he can still fight after taking a shot like that. So, yeah, let's move on then. So Law uses Shock Willie against Blackbeard. He takes a lot of damage from that. Augur warps over, grabs him. They land on the battlefield here. Law brings up the obvious of, like, you know, you have, you know, so many Devil Fruit users on your crew. You're basically, like, carrying around a bunch of anchors. You know, the weakness is all the same, you know? And it also lends the idea that Law has probably been training his crew specifically to be, like, an anti-Devil Fruit, you know, crew. You know, because it's like everybody knows what the weakness is. That's why, unfortunately, one thing we did not see in this chapter is Law's crew having access to Sea Prism. That would have been something that would have made this chapter perfect if, like, Sachi and Penguin bust out, like, Karyoseki swords, or, like, an arrow that's, like, a Karyoseki-tipped, like, arrowhead or bolt from a crossbow or something. That would have made it perfect. Or even, not even, like I said, not even a projectile weapon. Projectile Sea Prism would be great, but even, like, a spear, a club that has, like, Sea Prism, like, notches in it, or whatever, like a Sea Prism spiked club. That would be good enough, okay? And also, the ocean. The ocean is the ultimate weakness of all Devil Fruit users, and they're surrounded by it at all time. So Law probably trained his crew with, like, listen, we encounter Devil Fruit users, you try as best as you can to sink their ship and get them in the water, because it doesn't matter what crazy power they have. Once they're in the water, they're useless, okay? So there you go. That's going to be the main advantage. Now, there are Devil Fruits that are, you know, tougher to do this than others. Like, the main example is Augur, because he literally has the ability to teleport. So you can knock Augur off the side of the ship, and he's about to fall in the ocean. He could just warp and then appear back on the ship's deck. Same thing with Aokiji. He's not in this chapter, but Aokiji was seen in the cover page, where he has the ice power, so he could pretty much freeze the ocean. You know how Aokiji is so confident in, like, his, like, being immune to the weakness of water, where he literally, his main use of conveyance is taking a bicycle, like a regular bicycle, like a 10-speed with a little bell on it, like ding ding, and then just, you know, making an ice trail in the ocean, because he's not going to fall off. Even if he does fall off, he could just freeze the water, right? So there's some Devil Fruits that are, you know, harder than this than others. And also, you'd make the argument that, yeah, you could train the Heart Pirates to be anti-Devil Fruit and knock them in the water, but most Devil Fruit users that have had their power for any certain amount of time are super consciously aware of their one weakness and avoid it at all costs. Okay, so while you're training your crew to knock a Devil Fruit user in the water, the Devil Fruit user is specifically training to avoid getting knocked into the water. It's kind of like back in middle school when everybody would always trip me in the hallway. You're walking down the hallway and someone would always trip you and fall on the ground. So by the time I got into high school, I developed a secret technique to avoid getting tripped. So it happens so often. I literally developed this thing where when someone tried to trip me, I would do like this jump. I would like jump on one of my feet and then land. I'd be like, ha ha! I looked like a total dork doing it, but I never got knocked down all throughout high school. So
Who's laughing now, huh? Anyway, so let's see. Going back to the fight here after the Shock Willy, we cut inside of the brig of the Saber of Xebec. Purportedly, it is Blackbeard's flagship that is there. It took some damage with Sachi and Penguin probably like bombarding it with attacks. Also, the Polar Tang is underwater launching torpedoes or whatever, I would assume. So Pudding is there, and as I assumed from the first translation, the translation in the official viz that I'm reading right now, she quotes, she says, "If Mama is still alive, you won't be talking like that much longer." So implying that she doesn't know, she's not sure, okay? It's just like, well, she might be dead, but if she's not dead, you better be sorry, because she's gonna come and she's gonna rampage because you took me from, Totland and everything like that. I'm not even just one of her daughters, because you've seen before, Big Mom doesn't really care about every single one of her kids in that capacity. But when it comes to Pudding in particular, she would probably care, because Pudding has the ability, or the potential for the ability, to read poneglyphs, okay? So I don't know if that's the reason Pudding is so confident. Pudding might be just confident in the fact that, like, Big Mom is probably still alive. I mean, I hope she is, and if she is, you guys are all wiped out, right? Now, one of the Blackbeard members does respond to this by laughing and saying, well, the guy that we're fighting right now is the one who killed Big Mom. How's the new era supposed to get going if all the old legends stick around, right? And so the Blackbeard crew seems pretty confident that Law and Kid were able to like kill Big Mom. Like, she is dead. Pudding is not so sure. So there's no 100% certainty thing here. Obviously, Pudding is going to put her bets on Big Mom still being alive, because that's her mother, and she knows firsthand how strong and powerful she is and how resilient she is. And then obviously Blackbeard's crew is going to go along with the lines of, like, she's dead, because that makes it easier for Blackbeard to take over the seas, right? So, yeah, there's that. She might also just be, she might have been in this situation before. I mean, she's an officer on the Big Mom Pirates, all right? She might have had situations dealing with enemies before. Pudding is not going to be the kind of person that's going to be, like, quaking in her boots in the jail cell. She's going to be very confident with this and just be like, yeah, whatever, you can lock me up. I mean, I'm sure she's locked up with Sea Prism, so she can't use her memo no me in order to escape. Or though maybe they didn't lock her up with that. Maybe she could use that to escape. I'm not sure. And also not sure about if the third eye is awakened yet. Maybe it might have been something during Totland itself, just that whole really intense situation with the wedding cake. Maybe falling in love with Sanji did something with the eye. I'm not really sure, but we don't know her status yet on that. Also, I mean, another way you could look at it is because of her confidence, maybe it is awakened. So maybe she does have like a level of clairvoyance here where it actually kind of reminds me of, well, we don't know what her ability will be when she awakens her third eye, but if it's something like in Toriko, there's a character named Starjun, and he has the ability of clairvoyance, where he can basically open up. His ability is kind of similar, where he has like a third eye, and any person that he's seen before, he can lock on to anywhere in the world with his third eye. That's kind of his ability. So it might be something similar to, Pudding, where it's like, and that's immediately the first thing I thought of, like she awakened her third eye, and anybody that she's seen, like Big Mom, she can immediately see where she's at in the world and what she's doing. It seems to not be the case right here because she's not sure, but it might be. Something like that maybe later when she does awaken. Blackbeard opens up Black Vortex, about to draw Law in to absorb or negate the powers of the Op-Op Fruit, so then he can deal a devastating attack. He's using K-Room right now, so the idea is if Blackbeard grabs him and uses the power of the Yami Yami to negate the Op-Op Fruit, then I guess the K-Room bubble will just pop right there, the sword will go back to normal. Law still has Haki. He could still use Haki and everything like that, but he won't have his Devil Fruit, and that's like the main thing he's trained in, so that's going to be kind of scary. Although, you could argue that, like, if there's anybody that could avoid the Black Vortex, which is basically just a gravitational pull directly toward, Blackbeard, it would be Law. Because Law using Room, like, what happens if Blackbeard uses, Black Vortex, and then Law just uses Tact to reverse the gravity, so he's going in one direction, Blackbeard's pulling him towards him. It could be like a Devil Fruit tug of war kind of situation. I'm not sure how that would go, but that's where the battle ends right there. We do see the scene at Marine HQ with Akainu being very frustrated that he can't just go to the island, really kind of regretting the fact he took up the position of Fleet Admiral. I went into this into the review, but it's more of just like, he thought that probably becoming Fleet Admiral meant that he could just have complete control of the Marines and he could kind of still do whatever he wanted. Like, if I'm Fleet Admiral, that means at any time I can gather together a whole fleet of really strong Marines and I can lead the charge. But the whole point of the Fleet Admiral is not to lead the charge into battle. The only time that ever happened was when Sengoku was the commanding officer at Marineford, but that was because the pirates literally attacked Marineford. They attacked the home base, the headquarters of the Marines, so no shit, Sengoku was the one that actually was the leading officer in charge of that. But if pirates attacked some other faraway island, Sengoku's not going to hop on a ship and is going to personally lead the charge. That is not the job description of the Fleet Admiral. So poor Akainu, poor Sakazuki. He might go anyway. He might just be like, you know what, screw this, and take out his cigar and just like, prepare me a ship. He's like, but Fleet Admiral, you're needed here. Prepare me a ship. It might be something like that. We'll see. Because here's the thing. If any Marine would just like, you know what, screw the job description, I don't care, I'm going, it would be Akainu. He would be the one to do that. So Sengoku wouldn't, but he would be the one to do it. Even if, like, Kong or whoever was higher up was like, even if the Gorosei, like, got word of it, like, let's say Akainu was preparing a battleship and a fleet and he's gonna go fight. Now, the other Marines that are working under him would probably be very much empowered by that. They'd be like, holy crap, the Fleet Admiral himself is leading the charge into battle against Blackbeard and Law. This is insane. I'll follow your magma wherever, Sir Sakazuki. But if the Gorosei hear about this, they send a message and they're like, Akainu, you better not be leaving the Marine HQ. You cannot do that. He might just like disconnect, like hang up on the Gorosei and just go. It might be what happens. And that's just the first half of the damn chapter. Right? Okay. So now we're in the future land. Let's see. There's the whole thing with Luffy being aged to 70. This translation says Monkey D. Luffy in a different future. The first translation was like a glimpse at a possible future. So I don't think this is the way that Luffy's going to actually look when he's 70. It might be Bonnie's ability is just will age you up, and it might be the negative thing, because it's like, you think about her ability and how it actually works, and it's like, okay, the reason that Luffy will have that perfect future is when he, like, works out and trains and he looks like Garp at age 60 and 70, right? Well, Luffy has not trained, so what if her ability, if Bonnie's power is just, like, it takes you as you are now and then just ages you up? So Luffy never trains beyond this point. None of the life experiences that happened to him actually happen to him now. It's just his body aged up, like 50 years, so now he's age 70. Same thing with Chopper. Jinbei's a little different because he got aged back. Although, interesting thing I just noticed, Jinbei still has the scar on his face when he was a little kid. Hold on a moment, because Oda also drew... I have it queued up because I had it in the review yesterday. Oda also drew all of the warlords when they were kids already. So let me double check that really quick to see if Jinbei had the scar. Jinbei did not have the scar in that flashback. Okay, so that's interesting. So this actually provides a little bit of a difference between Bonnie's aging fruit. We still don't know the name of it. This would have been a perfect chapter to reveal the name of her power, but whatever. And Shinobu's mature devil fruit, okay? Because when Shinobu used the maturing devil fruit on Momonosuke and he became an adult, it wasn't like he was like an emaciated adult because he hadn't trained in like 20 years. He's like, oh, I'm weak. No, he was like an older adult. He was really muscular. He was strong. It was even mentioned that he has like the same like defensive capabilities as Odin. When like Nami kicked him, Momo gets up and Momo's just like, oh, that didn't hurt at all. And so, Zoro was there like, oh yeah, he got pretty tough, and so yeah. Now he's still inexperienced with like using his dragon devil fruit because that's not included in that. But the idea of the mature devil fruit might be to actually like age you up with the person that you would actually become. So I wonder if Shinobu used her devil fruit on Luffy to age 60 or 70, then Luffy would look like Garp, because it would be like, this is like if you were to mature normally and train and do all the stuff, then you would become, this is your like ideal self at age 60, versus Bonney's ability, which is just cheating, and it's just like, you know, it's like, oh, you're 70 now, like, oh, I'm old, okay, back to normal. In the case with Jinbei, he has the scar as an adult, so going back in time, it's not like Bonney is actually winding back the clock or something like that, which makes me think that if she used the power on Brook, it wouldn't work, and Brook would not get his skeleton, like muscle and flesh would not appear on his bones, you know what I mean? If, here's another example. If you lose, like, Shanks, okay? Let's say Bonney used her ability on Shanks to turn Shanks back into a kid. Would Shanks get his arm back? I don't think he would. I don't think Shanks would get his arm back, okay? So if that's the situation, it's just physically aging you as you are right now, okay? So Jinbei still has the scar. I'm sure he didn't have this scar when he was actually this age, but he still does because he has it as an adult. That stuff doesn't go away, okay? So that's the best way of looking at it, sure. They mentioned Kuma. They do the whole backstory with Kuma. I actually talked about this, pretty much everything I wanted to address this, I did say in the review, that it was probably a government setup, probably involving the Cypher Pole in some way to set Kuma up as this horrible tyrant. Bonney confirms that he wasn't a horrible tyrant. He was a very kind man. He loved his citizens of the Sorbet Kingdom. He hated the world government. That's why he was connected to the revolutionaries, but he would never agree to have like his morality and memories just taken away from him, his soul basically removed from him. So that's why Bonney is upset. But yeah, I don't think it had anything to do with Kuma actually being a tyrant. It was probably propaganda spread by the world government, by the Gorosei, to get their hands on Kuma's DNA, which is also probably part of a long, elaborate plan with Dragon and Vegapunk. And we see at the end of this chapter where Vegapunk is talking to Dragon, so this whole thing was probably like, okay, Kuma is a member of the Revolutionary Army. He's going to end up being experimented on by Vegapunk. They're going to turn him into a PX-0. They're going to make a bunch of, like, armies of Pacifista. But at the end of the day, those are all under the control of Vegapunk, and Vegapunk is working alongside Dragon. So it's all part of some master plan with this, and I'm sure also Kuma's memories are going to be returned to him at some point. So, yeah, I pretty much covered what I wanted to there. They're in a scrapyard right now. Bonney picks up the lightsaber. All right, so I use this as kind of a joke, where it's like all of this stuff is probably like still functional, like, you know, future tech. It's just that like Vegapunk, it wasn't up to his standards, so he threw it in the trash heap, but it's still really powerful. So I'm thinking like, you know, like, and Robin got those really cool gauntlets in this chapter. Bonney has a lightsaber. Can like Luffy and Chopper and Jinbei like rummage around the junk heap a little bit? They could probably find something that they could use, you know, like another laser sword. Like, did Vegapunk just make one of these? A jetpack? Imagine Chopper with a jetpack. That would be just, the hilarity just writes itself right there. Chopper gets a jetpack. Maybe Jinbei finds like a grappling hook or something he can use, like the grappling hook from like Zelda or something. What could Luffy get? Luffy could get, okay, what would be the perfect future weapon for Luffy to get his hands on? I'm trying to think here. Maybe some sort of gauntlet weapon similar to the photonic gloves, where, because Luffy's attacks are mainly just punches and stuff, punches and kicks and that kind of stuff, melee attacks. So maybe something he could put on, like a futuristic version of like brass knuckles that like they hit the opponent and they like freeze them in time for like 2 seconds or something like that. That could be something that Vegapunk might invent, you know, absolutely. But yeah, I love the fact that, yeah, Bonney pretty much just has a lightsaber now, so that's pretty handy. I have seen some people talking about, man, we need to have Zoro use a lightsaber. Now, I am definitely for Zoro using a lightsaber. I don't think Zoro is going to replace any of his katanas with a lightsaber, but I want to see Zoro. You've introduced a lightsaber now, Oda. You have to show Zoro using one. Like, you have to. Brook maybe, but Zoro absolutely. There could even be a moment where maybe somebody uses the lightsaber against Zoro, and he's just like, I don't care if it's future tech or lasers or whatever. There's nothing I can't cut. And Zoro, like, cuts the light of a lightsaber. Not even with using the photonic gloves or any of that shit. He just literally just cuts light because he's awesome. Using Conqueror's Haki and armament, he's able to slice a lightsaber's light in half. You know what I mean? Isn't there a whole, like, now listen, I'm not super familiar with the Star Wars, like, you know, lore and, like, explanations on how all this shit works. Like, I'm really not. But I understand there's probably detailed explanations on where and how lightsabers actually function. Like, the big question is, like, I remember when The Force Awakens came out. You have Kylo Ren, right? Kylo Ren has the lightsaber with, like, the cross guard, like the laser cross guard. I remember so many people complaining about those. Like, oh, the cross guard, you know, you move it the wrong way, it'll slice your damn wrist off or something like that. Like, it's not going to work for what you need it for. And I think I heard some explanation that, like, with lightsabers, it's not like anything the laser hits or taps and immediately, like, gets cut apart. Like, there's a level of resistance or something with it where it's like, when you swing the sword, it's kind of like if you take a bladed sword, like a regular sword. If you take a really sharp sword and just gently set it down next to you, it's not going to cut you. You have to, like, bring it down with force at an angle and actually slice with it for it to actually cut you. Kind of the same thing with a lightsaber, at least what I'm led to believe there. So maybe it's something like that, though, where, like, Bonney will take out the sword and try to attack Vegapunk, Zoro will block it, and it'll be able to work. I don't know. Well, guess we'll find out. So, yeah, Bonney has a lightsaber, Luffy and Chopper, and I guess Jinbei return to their normal ages, and now we move to the last part of the chapter where we just see the robot. They mention it uses anti-gravity tech, so I'm hoping that comes back. I'm hoping that's not just, like, brushed under the rug. Like, oh, yeah, anti-gravity technology. That's not going to be useful against the guy that uses gravity to suck in his opponents like Blackbeard. Yeah, no. Yeah, the photonic gloves that allow you to interact with and punch light in the face. Yeah, punch light Yagami in the face. A lot of people, you know, somebody needed to punch light Yagami in the face early on in Death Note, and we wouldn't have had Death Note, you know? So anyway, no. Yeah, we have all these really cool technology that could combat Devil Fruit users. This needs to be brought up later. In fact, I think that might be what Oda's doing. He's, like, sprinkling this throughout the story. Like, oh, yeah, a little bit of lore here. Like, oh, yeah, a glove that can interact with light. Yeah, anti-gravity technology, engines. We'll see where this goes. Let's see. So they land in the future island Egghead. Well, in this version, it's the Labosphere, but I like the stratum better. The research stratum I think was cooler. Something I forgot to bring up though is underneath the egg, on the ceiling of the egg, it actually says Punk Records on it, which that had to be a reference at some point because punk is a genre of music. I don't think Punk Records is the name of a record label, but punk is the genre, so Punk Records makes sense. Lilith brings up the pyrobrine chemical or substance, and I went into that into the review. That's the substance that actually makes up island clouds and actually able you to, like, walk on them and cut them up and use things for various purposes. They get their different outfits. Nami's and Robin's are very sexy. Sanji has a Hawaiian shirt. Frankie has the cool clockwork thing, and, like, he sort of has, like, Cyclops' visor from, like, X-Men on his face, so that looks pretty cool there. Yeah, and then it pretty much ends with the big thing, which is, like, Vegapunk is communicating with Dragon, which we should already pretty much know about. The idea is that Vegapunk is so intelligent that he knows that, like, okay, the government is probably going to send some assassins to take me out because, you know, I know too much. I've created everything, and also the Seraphim might have been the last straw. The Seraphim might have been like, okay, if Vegapunk wanted to, because the government's, like, the Gorosei are not stupid either. They have to be aware that, like, Vegapunk could flip a switch somewhere and all the pacifistas and Seraphim could be working for him now, not the government. So they have to be aware of this threat as well, which is probably why they're sending the CP0 after him, okay? Now, this is Shaka, who's Vegapunk 1 with a first satellite body, the good Vegapunk. Lilith is the evil Vegapunk, so it'll be nice to see how they interact maybe next chapter. Yeah, but we still have yet to see the main Stella body, so no idea where that's at. The main body might even be in, like, cryogenic stasis or something. It might be like this old shriveled up man that's, like, frozen in a capsule or something in, like, deep hibernation or cryostasis, allowing the satellite bodies to do their own thing, right? Might be something like that. Anyway, yeah, that's the chapter, and now I think I finally covered every major thing. Like, the Vegapunk and Dragon thing, I think that might just be its own separate video, because that's something that's, like, been a theory for a long time, so I wasn't surprised by it, but there's a lot of stuff that could lead to because of it, you know what I mean? Like, and we're gonna find out the whole thing, the connection between Kuma, Bonney, Dragon, Vegapunk, pacifistas, probably learn some more about Mad, so that'll tie into Judge, that'll tie into Queen. Sanji's here about to meet Vegapunk, so Vegapunk might bring up, like, oh, you're Sanji Vinsmoke, you're Judge's son, and Sanji will be like, don't mention his name. He's like, yeah, well, did you know your old man used to work, you know, for Vegapunk? And then cue up the flashback when Sanji was
talking to Yonji back at Totland, where Yonji was like, oh yeah, did you know our old man used to work for Vegapunk? Because I don't think Sanji knew that up until Yonji told him. So Sanji will probably flash back to that moment, and he'll be like, oh wait, yeah, that's right. Also, he'll flash back to Queen talking about him during, Wano. And so Sanji doesn't like his father at all, but he might have some questions for Vegapunk about what's up with the Germa's technology and how does Vegapunk tie into all this. More than anything, Sanji might be a little bit untrusting of Vegapunk, because it's like, whoa, wait a second. I hate my dad. My dad, Judge, is a horrible human being, and you used to be partners with him, so are you a horrible human being too? Like, that might be the angle Sanji takes it, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, if you guys were working together, well, what are you up to? What are your goals for life, and everything like that. So that might be a thing that gets brought up too. Usopp has to get, like, can we have Usopp fire a laser gun in this arc? Like, please? Like, that would be cool. Laser gun Usopp, maybe a laser cannon for Frankie. Just give everybody lasers. Give Robin a giant-ass laser cannon. Like Usopp has, like, a pistol. Frankie has, like, a little attachment on his arm. Like, what about you, Robin? It's like that scene in Terminator 2 where, Arnold pulls out, like, the giant minigun. He, like, takes out the minigun, and John is just like, it's very you. We cut over to Robin. She just has this giant, like laser cannon that's like twice the size of her body. She has to use her Hana no Mi to make extra arms to even lift the thing up. And then Frankie and Usopp are like, that is very super. And then, Robin is just like, I like cannons, like, damn straight you do. All right, so yeah, can we have that, please? Please? Okay. Anyway, yeah, that's the chapter, or the chapter follow-up or whatever. Now we move on to probably the most anticipated animal fact out of all of them. I'm sorry this took so long to get to, but we have finally arrived at Narwhal facts. So cue the intro. Anybody that was a fan of the internet back in like 2008, 2009, this will be a blast from the past for you.
Narwhals swimming in the ocean, pretty big and pretty wide, and beat a polar bear in a fight.
Narwhals, baby, narwhals. All right, so what exactly is a narwhal? All right, well, a narwhal is a species of whale, which actually adds a few complications to this, because I was really dead set on the letter W being whale facts, but we'll deal with that when we get to it. Narwhals are a type of whale. There are only two species in the particular genus of whale, so it's narwhals and beluga whales. So if you ever saw a beluga whale, they kind of look similar to narwhals, but those are their closest living relative. Narwhals, of course, live in the north, around Canada, Greenland, the Nordic countries, Russia, north of Russia, the Arctic. That kind of general region is where they live and where they breed and everything like that. I first heard about narwhals from this book right here, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea by Jules Verne, which is a very good book. The beginning of this book is that they're actually investigating, like, there's some kind of object or animal in the water that's like striking ships and like sinking them. We later find out it's a submarine. It's like an advanced submarine, I believe, called the Nautilus. It's been a long time since I've read it, but that was the submarine in the book, and they go 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. But they originally assumed it might have been a narwhal, like piercing a ship with its like really giant horn, okay? So let's talk about the tusk of the narwhal, because that's like the main attraction of the damn thing, right? It's like a whale that has a giant horn coming out of it. Well, first and foremost, it's not a horn, it's actually a tooth. It's one of its canine teeth that actually just grows. It just keeps growing throughout its entire life, and then it actually pierces the lip, and then it just goes out of the body. So just imagine that for a moment. Imagine if like we had like one or two teeth in our mouths that just never stop growing, and they just grow. So like they're super, like walrus is kind of the same thing. Like we just have walrus teeth just walking around as like humans or whatever, right? So in some cases, about, I think, well, 1 in 500 males have two horns, have like two tusks. I shouldn't call them horns, they're tusks, or like teeth coming out of them. But after all of them, only 15% of females, though, actually grow a tusk at all. So, you know, less females actually have tusks. And the thing is, like, what exactly is the tusk for?
okay? The thing can grow up to 3 meters or 10 feet in length, so it's like there has to be a purpose for this thing. Now, immediately you would think they fight with it, right? Like it's this giant tusk, this spiked, curved like thing that you can like stab something with. That has to be what its main function is, right? Not really though. I mean, they have been shown to use it to like attack fish and like stun a fish in order to like eat it. But it hasn't been shown to be like its main weapon. You know, even when we see like the two males like clashing tusks, you think it's like they're fighting or whatever, but honestly, it seems to be more of a means of communication rather than fighting. There's some people that are thinking maybe it's there as an evolutionary adaptation to breaking the thick ice in their homeland. So, like, there's an ice sheet or something. They use the tusk to break it so they can surface. Maybe that's the purpose. But the general vibe of it right now is it's more of, like, a sexual characteristic. It's like, you know, hey, check out my tusk. You know, it's the longest tusk in the whole pod. So, you know, it might be something like that. Also might be used as not even so much like a sexual characteristic, but just like as a hierarchical thing. You know, just like the narwhal that has the longest tusk gets to lead the pod kind of situation, right? I mean, how are you going to argue with that? He's got the longest tusk. I mean, it's obvious right there, right? Let's see here. Oh, here's something it's interesting, though, is that it is probably most likely not a useful thing for like survival though. Like whatever the tusk's main function is, they can survive perfectly fine without it. In fact, most females that do not have tusks actually live longer than males that do. So if the tusk was something that was like integral to their survival, like they need the tusk in order to hunt and fish and eat, then the ones that did not have tusks clearly would have died off. That is not the case. So it's for some purpose, but they can get around perfectly fine if they don't have it. So, if, you know, that doesn't mean like, because these animals have been poached for their horns before. So, you know, but if they were to lose their tusk, that doesn't necessarily mean that like they wouldn't be able to eat anymore because they lost it. Okay. So there's that. There's one example of a female growing 2 tusks, but that was back in 1684, and that was the only example of such. So it's very rare for females to grow tusks at all, and in that case, even to have 2 is a big thing, and it's only 1 in 500 males that have it. Oh, and the tusk can weigh up to 22 pounds, so it's pretty heavy. So, yeah, that was the first episode of Narwhal Facts, and I feel like I might have just covered the most interesting fact about narwhals is the tusk. So I'll try to find. We're moving on to the letter O. Octopus facts. Let's go. I don't know. We'll see if I can find any more narwhal facts, but that might just be the one episode of narwhal facts. Anyway, thanks for watching. Tekking101 signing out. Later. Send me narwhal facts.